thank you for giving me this opportunity to share what Christ has done for me and how much I love serving Him. It's been over 80 years since I made a decision for Christ, and I would say it was the best decision I ever made. You know, the Lord is more precious every year that I live, so you can see how much I'm committed to serving the Lord. I was born and raised on a farm in around Wauseon, Ohio. I have 3 sisters, and when I was 5 years old, the pastor from a small church called on us, and we started going to church. I loved going to Sunday school, and I loved hearing the stories about Jesus. And when I was 7 years old, I knelt at the altar and accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. He has been very precious to me all these years. I loved, even if my parents weren't able to go to Sunday school, I'd call the neighbors and see if I could ride with them, because it was very important in my life. And all my life, I have always found a church to go to no matter where we were living. Because the Lord said we should assemble ourselves together, and I took it literally. Since I didn't have any brothers, my oldest sister and I had to help my dad. We had a lot of chores to do after school, and then during the summer we both had to work out in the fields, driving horses or whatever my dad had for us to do. And I didn't really appreciate having to work so hard. So he gave me a lot of chores or jobs that I really didn't feel like I was capable of doing. So I prayed a lot. I just asked the Lord to help me to do whatever I had to do. So that strengthened my faith even back in those years.
Wow.
But you know, when we started our business, it was a lot of hard work and a lot of commitment, and I could see then that the Lord was preparing me, even back in those early years, because I knew how to work. I met Orville when I was a senior in high school, and our friends, we used to meet downtown on Saturday nights, and we'd walk the streets, and then we'd go end up in a ice cream parlor and meet more friends. And I met Orville at one of those meetings. He'd call me, he had his eye on me right away, he said. But I really didn't, you know, I didn't pick him out that course. But, he called me for a date, and I turned him down a couple of times, but then I decided I'd go out with him. And I found out that he was a very sincere, kind, gentle, and very cooperative. And then I also learned that he had a heart for God. And he enjoyed going to Sunday school class meetings and to Sunday school with me and to church. And so I thought he was pretty special too. And but he was raised in a Mennonite church, and there was 13 in his family, and he was about in the middle. And when he was through the 9th grade, he quit school to help his dad on the farm. And so he worked on the farm And that was another thing we had in common. But after he wasn't kept very busy on the farm, so he started working for a carpenter. And they built barns and houses, and he soon became the best carpenter that he had. And he always had him build the cabinets and the fireplaces and the stair rails, the things that needed a craftsmanship. And so he became very gifted and enjoyed that type of work too. After I graduated from high school, I went to Toledo and I went to beauty school. And after I graduated from that, I worked in Toledo for 2 years, for a couple years at least, and in a beauty shop. And he would come down Saturday and pick me up and then take me back on Sunday night. And after we'd gone together for 2 years, we got married in January 1941. And since my folks didn't have money for a large wedding, and we were both very conservative, and we wanted to save our money for buying furniture, so we just had a small wedding at our home, and just had some family and friends there. After he continued to being a carpenter, and I worked part-time at a beauty shop in Wasion. And then about 11 months later, in fact it was December the 7th, which was on a Sunday, 67 years ago, when we were driving home from having lunch with some friends that we had gone to church with, we heard over the radio that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. And we were so young, and had so many dreams, but we knew that our lives would be changed. And soon after that, we moved to Detroit, and he worked in a factory where they was building airplane motors. And then of course they all had to sign up for the draft. And when his number was coming up for the draft, he wanted to pick his own service. And so he went around and visited all the services, and the Coast Guard gave him a first-class carpenter, and so that was pretty good. And so he joined them. He left in June, and after his boot camp, he was sent out to California in the San Francisco area. And so he thought he was going to be there for a while, so I went out there to live with him. And I got a job in a little place, in a little factory that they brought the small fighter planes in to be repaired, and they would have bullet holes in them. And so I learned to be a riveter, and I put patches on these holes. And so we were there a little over a year, and he was shipped out in the Pacific. He was put on a LST boat, a ship, which is a ship that carries the troops and the tanks, and to make the landings on the islands that they were fighting on. And so after he left the States, I came back to Adrian because my mother had come here to work in a factory. And so I went to the United Brethren Church here in Adrian, and because that was the denomination I went to when I was in Ohio. And I had a lot of support. There was other young girls that husbands had left, was in the service, and so we somehow got through it. We didn't have television at that time, And so it was just the radio and the newspapers to get our news. I didn't get letters from Orville very frequent because of being on a ship. And when I did get them, I would get 6 or 8 at a time. But after he was gone, he was gone for over 18 months. He was eligible for a furlough, and so he was coming home in July of '45. And I remember going to the Toledo train station to pick him up. And he just thought I was so small. He couldn't, hadn't saw me for so long. And I had rented a cottage at Round Lake so that we could just get together or get along by ourselves and just kind of catch up for our lost time. And then the Japanese, they surrendered in August. So that was another big celebration. Down the streets of Adrian was just packed with people. We all went down there just to celebrate. And then since he'd been in the service for over 3 years, well, he was eligible for discharge, and so he got his discharge in October.
Wow.
It was always Orville's dream to have a small cabinet shop. And so when we, during the war, or during our service, we saved all our money, all that we could. In fact, Orville, he got $151 a month, and he sent $150 home. He said, I don't gamble, I don't drink, and I don't smoke, so I don't need any money. And then, of course, I worked in the factory. I don't even remember what I got, but it seemed pretty good wages at that time. So we had about $8,000 saved up when I got back, and so we started looking for a little a lot to build our little building on. And in the meanwhile, there was a little cabinet shop in town, and he got a job there, and he told the man that he would be leaving in the spring to build his own cabinet shop. And so he did. He built the building, a 40 by 60 on Springbrook Avenue. And our son was born in June, and we opened our shop in the 1st of September, and with 1 employee. And we just, bookkeeping was the subject I loved, and in school. And so I was really pleased that I could have take that part in our business. So I kept the books. And of course I worked with our CPA, and he helped me set up the books. And if I had any questions, I always connected with him. But we just said, if it was made of wood, why, we would make it. And we had kept, the work kept coming in. And after 5 or 6 years, where we had, 6 or 7 employees, but Orville realized that he could never grow by doing custom work. And so he started making planning his own cabinet line that could be built on a assembly line. And the builders, the large builders were really coming into place so that we could sell our units to them in their projects. Then we built the building out at West Beecher then, because we didn't have space in our little building. And we started a sales force going out, and we went out 250 miles radius, and had that absorbed, and we went out 500-mile radius, and just kind of kept growing until we had covered the whole nation. And we started building assembly plants in the areas that had large builders, and then they would set up distributors in those areas. And then we decided we needed plants to make our parts, the doors and the frames. We used to buy those from other sources, but we were getting too large and they couldn't take care of us, so we started making our own. Through this all, of course, we had a lot of growing pains, and we always had a good credit, and we were able to get a small business loan, so that helped us a lot and relieved a lot of pressure. We also had, a lot of pressures along the way, but we just realized that the Lord has, we kind of took His promises at His hand, like cast your burdens upon the Lord and I shall sustain you, or I'll never give you more than you can handle. And we just kind of leaned on those, and we did our best and did what was right, and prayed, and the Lord just brought us through, usually. He also sent us a lot of good people. Orville, he worked in the plant with the workmen for many, many years, because he had such good ideas of jigs and custom-made equipment that would make the job easier and faster. And it was just his goal was to build the best cabinet for the dollar. He wasn't interested in building the most expensive cabinet or the cheapest one, but we wanted to build the one that would help the most people. And so that we really did accomplish. He always treated his employees, he was a people person. He worked with them, and he wanted to help them. He encouraged them to do their best. And when he discovered how many dollars worth of, how many units it would take to, with the labor, to have a break-even point, he said, well, whatever they did over that breaking point, we would give them 50% in a bonus, and we would keep the other for capital equipment and so forth. And so that worked out very well. He had a girl that calculated at the end every day, and then they post it by the time clock to how much bonus they made, and we would pay them every week. So he had a real good working relationship with his employees. And we just, kept growing until after 40 years, we were the largest cabinet company in the nation. We had over 12 plants and 4,000, more than 4,000 employees. And then Orville's health was sort of failing, and we felt that we was growing too large for just a family-owned company, and we needed to do something. So we either had to go public or we had to merge with a company, and so we merged with Masco, which was they were a nice family-oriented company, and they wanted us to continue on doing just what we were. They weren't coming in and changing anything. So Richard, our son, became the president, and he was president for over 12 years. And I say that Richard, he grew up too fast. because he was always with us, and he was always working with us. You know, he started sweeping the floor when he was just a kid, and on summer, when he was old enough, in the summers he would work in the plant, and after he had graduated from high school and college, he was a full-time employee. So he enjoyed the business also, and was a very good asset to it. So the plant went on, and he was there for over 12 years, and Orville and I, we just sort of faded out. Orville, as soon as he got back from the service, well, he got really involved in our church. He taught Sunday school for over 30 years. We sang in the choir for about 30 years, and he was lay leader and on the board, and it was church was the priority in our life. We'd go to church Sunday morning and Sunday night and Wednesdays, and always very looking out at the church. But all our life, we, of course, the Bible and the Lord says that we, you know, all that we have belongs to Him, but He did want us to give 10%. So we always wanted to do that all during our life, even our business. We would always tithe, and then when we could do more, well, we did. So. You know, being the Christian life, it doesn't, it's really a growing, you know, there's times when you feel committed, that you haven't dedicated, you know, I know the Lord committed me, convicted me, like I hadn't dedicated my life to Him, and so I know at one time in my early married life, I just knelt at the altar and I said, you know, you can have my life. I'm completely committed. You know, there's nothing in this world worth holding on to. And, you know, just the peace and joy that only Christ can give. And then we had opportunities in our earlier business life to help in a particular situation, family, and we really weren't prepared to help it, but we had a good credit, and we just felt the Lord laid it upon our heart. And so we did extend ourselves to even borrowing so that we could take care of this situation. And, you know, that was such a blessing. You know, we got such a blessing out of helping that it made us want to work harder so that we could do more. And we, all through the years, there was always always requests, and, you know, you always were really wanting to help, and you made sacrifices to do it. Well, Orville was always, of course he always mentioned, he wished he would have had more education. So education to him was important. And, but he thought, you know, it should be Christ-centered. And so the Lord laid upon our heart to start the Christian school at our church. We started at pre-K through the 3rd grade. And each year we added a grade until it got up to the 8th grade. And then and we thought that was as far as we could take it. And then when we sold the business, or when Orville was a Sunday school teacher, we would always he had the high school class, and he wanted to take them. We took them out once a month just for some entertainment. And it was difficult finding a place to take them. In the wintertime, we usually go bowling, and the bowling alleys would really be so smoky, or maybe drinking and so forth. And so we said if we ever could, we would build we would like to build a youth center. So after we sold the business, Orville said, well, maybe now is the time we can build that youth center. And so I thought, yes, I think that would be great. And we always drove around this corner to go to the corporate office to go to work every day for a number of years. And it was just a farm, had had a house on it. And we thought, oh, that would be an ideal place. And we checked with the lady. She wasn't living in the house. Nobody was living in the house, but she was living with her daughter. And she says, well, my husband said I should always hang on to the farm. And so, okay, we looked around, and we never could find any place else. And so finally a realtor got involved, and her son got involved, and we were able to purchase this land of 72 acres. And then about that time, the school was wanting a high school. And Orville said, well, if they took a survey and there was enough interest, we would consider it. And so they discovered there was, and so we pursued it with an architect and worked out the plans, started with the high school then, and just moved the whole school here because and then we built the family center, and of course we thought it was going to be just a youth center, but you know, family is so important that we just extended ourselves to a family center. And so it has been a real blessing. As we said, he felt so committed to Christian education, and really we supported a lot of Christian colleges and everything that had to do with making young people, because they are our tomorrow leaders.
That's exactly right.
Well, Orville was always always for growth and progress. All his life, he never stood still. And so I know that he would be pleased with the changes that we made at the Family Center, and just to see how we're reaching out and being able to touch more people, and hopefully just getting them to love the Lord like we do.
That's right. Yeah, very
and,
good.
And then in the school, I know that he would really be pleased with that. He, of course, we'd like to have it be filled, because it is, we could accommodate at least 750, but we have to be thankful for what we got, and just work. You know, every child, I think every child that goes through the school, it would be nice if they all had a relationship with Christ, but we know that that's not going to happen. But I do really think that when somebody that goes through the school, that when they get out into the world and certain situations confront them, they will think about that teacher that was so kind and tried to help them, or the chapel service that touched their lives. And I've had several young people just recently come and tell me, I went through Lenawee Christian School, but I wasn't a Christian, and but I am now, and how that influenced their lives. So we we never know. We always have to keep trying.
Yes.
We never can